few weeks ago I read this thing that just felt like it was speaking to the core of my being, like just, oh my god, this. And I kind of can't stop thinking about it, and it feels particularly relevant to this whole VEDA thing. So Ta-Nehisi Coates writes lots of brilliant things for The Atlantic, and in addition to all of his big important pieces on racism and society, he has also written a few lovely essays on his quest to learn French. So the piece that triggered all of this was a short essay called A Quick Note on Getting Better at Difficult Things, which I will link in the description because it's short and it'll be less than 5 incredibly well spent minutes of your time. Near the end, he writes, "There is absolutely nothing in this world like the feeling of sucking at something and then improving at it." Fuck yes. That. I can't say when exactly I started giving myself permission to be terrible, but I know that this was a fairly recent development for me. My childhood was filled with a long string of lessons for different things that just didn't take, and a big part of why is that my childhood self took my missteps as evidence that I was somehow deficient. I can see now that the actual deficiency lay in how I was framing things. Looking back, it's now pretty easy for me to see this as part of a larger narrative of abilities and strengths as being things that are somehow removed from me. Like the whole idea of gifted implies that it's not so much hard work that nets success as this like innate have it or you don't gift. The science class that I was taking when I was 12 years old is the first subject that I remember being like really difficult for me, and my response to it was basically to write the whole subject of science off indefinitely as something that I just wasn't good at. And the thing is, it was never a matter of like being afraid of or averse to doing work. I had just never even internalized that as being the issue. For whatever reason, I came to understand it as being a matter of these gifts and abilities that were somehow outside of myself, like removed from me and beyond my control. And then there's this other piece that came along a little bit later. In whatever tragic adolescent phase I developed my excessive concern for how I was being perceived, I also acquired the added dimension of not wanting to look stupid. And it's only recently that I've come to recognize that bullshit for the ridiculous intellectual vanity that it totally is, and I fucking hate it. But the thing is, to be terrible at things and try them anyway is to expose yourself to ridicule, to be vulnerable in some way. And I mean, that ridicule is never as harsh as you imagine or as relentlessly critical as that mega dick voice that's living in your head, but like that doesn't make the fear any less potent. It's part of why my own story of trying to learn French played out so horribly. I went silent and perfected my pantomime game and told lies of omission by not correcting people when they assumed that I was just in Paris on a week-long vacation. I was plagued by this feeling of despair that Coates also writes about in his short little essay. I remember returning from France at the end of the summer of 2013 and being convinced that I had some kind of brain injury which prevented me from hearing French vowel sounds, but the real enemy was not any injury so much as the feeling of despair. All of this, of course, is not to make some sort of insane rhetorical Mario jump to the idea that there are not often like insurmountable or at least disproportionate obstacles to difficult things, because like the whole idea of difficult things is incredibly vague and I'm only talking about a very particular subset of that idea. What I am saying is that one of the best things that I have acquired in recent years is a coming to terms with all of the things that I am very, very bad at but would like to maybe get better with because it would be fulfilling or interesting, and most importantly because I can. Maybe. And maybe I just want to fucking dabble in things and only improve insofar as it would make them more enjoyable. The key is in recognizing that competency is not usually some glorious gift from on high, but a thing that is acquired through a lot of time and usually also a whole lot of failure. And the bigger my goals and plans for trying to do a thing, the greater the gap between like my starting point and that sort of personal target for mastery, the more failure I am likely to have to get through along the way. And it is totally okay to mourn those failures as they happen, so long as I don't try to turn that into the entirety of my story with that thing, because even the successes won't be that. Even the achievements, if they are attained in the service of something that I actually want to continue, aren't going to be anything more than highlights in a longer journey of struggle and improvement. Awesome highlights that are totally worthy of celebrating, but like at the same time, just pieces of a story in progress. Progress that ultimately owes a whole lot to the faceplants that bore it. Go forth and fuck up.
Got him. Got him. Nailed it.